Deep in the jungles of Ecuador, there are tales of a library that was created by an ancient advanced civilization. Those who claim to have visited this library claim that it contains massive metal books. In part 1 we discussed the possibility of an advanced civilization having existed here on Earth. In part 2 we are going to look at the different peoples and cultures that have lived in the area of this rumored ancient library. Ever since the dawn of civilization in the Americas, there have been stories of strange mysterious creatures. Stories of magical, powerful, mythical beings. And stories of fantastical, legendary places. Are these stories just legendary, fantastical tales? Or do these stories have some basis in reality? The answer to these questions is what we will try to find out. Here on Mysteries, Myths, and Legends of the Americas. Legend says that as you approach Cueva de los Tallos, there is a pool of water. In that pool of water is an opening. If one goes through that opening, they will eventually come across a strange and a mysterious ancient library. It is said that this library contains massive metal books. It is claimed that these books are so massive that it is difficult, if not next to impossible, for a person to carry them, much less bring them back to the surface. In this episode, we are going to look at the known history around Cueva de los Tallos, to see if such an amazing feat could have been done by any known civilization. Before getting into some of the interesting lore in the surrounding area of Cueva de los Tallos, we want to first go over this notion of metal books. Today when we hear the term metal books, it immediately sparks the imagination. After all, we are used to hearing of books being made of paper or leather, not metal. However, you may be surprised to learn that there have been metal books recovered across the globe. Now, these books have been met with a lot of skepticism by mainstream academics. However, there is a specific group of people that have, let's say, a vested interest in proving that ancient metal books do indeed exist. That group would be the Mormons. While mainstream academics were quick to dismiss some of these metal books as modern-day forgeries, research conducted by Brigham Young University and others have proven the authenticity of several of these metal books. Now that we know that ancient cultures did indeed create metal books, those books appear to be far and few between. To our knowledge, there have never been any metal books found in the Americas. Instead, it appears that all known metal books have been found in either the Middle East or the Near East. Now that we know that there is precedent for the existence of ancient metal books, the question now becomes, if this library really does exist, then who on earth built it? The history of ancient Ecuador is interesting. It is believed that Asian nomads landed in Ecuador around 14,000 BCE. From there they begin to spread out across the South American continent. Over the next several thousand years, several groups developed and ruled over various parts of what is now known as Ecuador. One group, known as the Valdivia, has the honor of being the first culture in the Americas to create and use pottery. Various groups arose until the 1500s. That's when the Incas invaded and conquered Ecuador. Subsequently, the Incas were conquered, and by the mid-1500s Ecuador was a Spanish colony. Now, this creates an interesting problem. If one were to speculate as to who created this library, the first two answers would probably be either the Inca or the Mayans. In the case of the Mayans, they never had a presence here, and the Incas' presence was short and far too late. Now, as mentioned in part 1, unlike other legends of lost cities, Cueva de los Tallos has some interesting evidence that might support some of these incredible claims. Thanks to the BCRA expedition in 1976, something of great interest was found. We will cover the BCRA expedition in depth in part 3. While to our knowledge no metal book or metal library was found, the expedition did find a burial chamber. In that burial chamber was a seated skeleton. The skeleton is dated to be from around 1500 BCE. What is even more interesting is that the roof of the cave system is created in such a way that when the summer solstice arrives, the sun's rays beam directly down onto the skeleton. Subsequent research tends to point to this skeleton as being someone of significance and that this place is a place of significance. By finding the skeleton, the BCRA expedition has given us a potential clue as to how old this rumored metal library might be. Now, this is pure speculation, but by finding the skeleton it would seem to indicate that the library probably dates to around that time period, if not before. To put this in perspective, this skeleton is about as old, if not older, than the Trojan War. It is also about the same age as the oldest surviving written records of China. So now that we have an estimated age of the library, the question is, who could have created this metal library? Well, it definitely wasn't the Maya and it definitely wasn't the Inca. So that leaves us with someone else, but who was that someone? Perhaps some long-lost civilization. Now, the idea of a long-lost civilization lying in the jungle is not as far-fetched as it may sound. While studying anthropology, I was amazed to learn about the lost city of El Mirador. El Mirador was an ancient Mayan city. In fact, if you visit it today, you would barely even know that you were standing on the ruins of an ancient city. However, what amazed me was the size of this city. It is estimated that this city covered an area of about 15 square miles and had a population density that could rival that of Los Angeles. It had roads and canals, among other things. However, for some reason, the Mayans abandoned this place and the jungle reclaimed the ruins. So just like El Mirador today, perhaps Cueva de los Tallos is part of some massive forgotten city. However, this still doesn't answer the question of who could have built such a city. The only way to find out for sure is to actually find this metal library. It would be interesting to see if it looked similar to this or more like this instead. In the next episode, we will cover the modern story of Cueva de los Tallos, and as you will see, it makes the claims of a metal library all that more intriguing.